Hello, and welcome to Birth Through the Veil. I'm Melissa Camrudin, and I have an anecdote for you to start this one off. So, a couple months ago, we were celebrating my husband's birthday, a big milestone birthday, 40th birthday at this restaurant. And at the same restaurant, we saw there was a 90th birthday being celebrated. And so we were looking around and trying to figure out who is 90. There didn't appear to be anyone in this party that was 90. And it turned out it was this gentleman who was dancing with all of his family at this restaurant. So they had their dinner and then music played and he danced with his wife, like with so much energy, probably like the Charleston or something kind of from the 50s, 60s. And then he danced with all of his granddaughters and his daughters. And it was so beautiful. And afterward we talked to him and just said, happy birthday. It's so fun to share a birthday. And like, what's your secret? And he said, him and his wife, they said the secret is to dance all the time, that they have been dancing together since 1955 and they go out dancing every week together and they're going to do it until their last days together. I loved it. Just seeing them there so young and full of life and dancing with so much joy. And that just leads right into the guest I have this week. Drew Temple is joining me. I met Drew officially at Earth Daughters last year, although we have a mutual friend, so I feel like I had known her a long time. But in fact, we met at Earth Daughters and decided to record an episode together, and we get into all kinds of wonderful things. I'm not even going to try to summarize it, but you're going to really enjoy this conversation, as I hope you do all the conversations. Come and join both Drew and I this year at Earth Daughters. We would both love to hang out with you, and definitely catch Drew's offering. It was a first for me, and I will definitely be participating in it again this year. Well, hi, Drew.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi. I feel like I've known you a long time, but I actually don't at all. It's just because we have a mutual friend who reminds me so much of you.
Oh, it's so true.
Yes.
And it was brief but meaningful, our interactions, and there's something so special about meeting someone with their child or one of their children, because you just get it's very deep, those relationships. So it's an extension of that human being, and it's almost like there's a line for parents of, you get to experience what it's like to have a piece of your heart outside of yourself. And then I think for people around a mother with their child, like, you're just like, it's just, the field of resonance is so big. And that's actually, and so our mutual friend, our beloved Chelsea, I met her and her two boys, and it was like, who are you people? Like, I just felt so deeply in love with their family.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Another friend and I joke a lot about loving to have a therapy baby, or like your,
Yes.
oh, what's the word? Like your comfort baby for public situations. And so I was thinking, like, I'm pretty introverted. I like people, but I like them like a couple at a time, like one or two at a time. So I was thinking of going to Earth Daughters. I'm like, that's a lot. But I was like, but I'll have the little baby. Yeah. And babies are just a natural, like, they bring a natural softening to everyone and a natural thing to talk about, right? Like, we don't have to wonder. You don't have to, it's just like an automatic introduction. And I met so many cool people at Earth Daughters who I probably honestly wouldn't have met, because I'm pretty quiet and like kind of stand on the edges, but the baby's just something to talk about, and she's cute and she's smiling at everybody. And so it was, a really delightful experience to bring the little therapy baby to Earth Daughters and just have her kind of like mothered by all these women. And you're right. It does. I think when everyone's around a baby, they, what is it like? It's like there's a portal there, that you can just connect in a quicker way. It's like a shortcut to connection.
Totally. That's a great way to put it. And your baby's like, oh my gosh, I felt like a tractor beam of like, wow, this child is so precious. And for all the intensity of being alive, there's just something about looking at a child, and especially you just like look into their eyes and you're like, okay, cool. Like, this is all for you. Like, everything we're all trying to navigate, the hope that I think so many of us are seeking and searching for. It's like, it just emanates from a child's eyes, because they're so close to the place from which we all came.
They
And so
just came from there.
they just came. So they're just this like little messenger. It feels like a little angel of like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. And then simultaneously they're figuring out being in a body. So you watch parents and families' capacities being stretched beyond what's even imaginable. Like I have so much reverence for parents because it's big work.
Everybody's learning. You know, here, so my baby's older brother's 3. So he was born in 2021 and everything was locked down and crazy, right? And you couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. And so then when he was maybe about 6 months old, some stores started to open, things started to come about. And so he's heading out into public at about 6 months when babies are getting really curious and realizing there are other humans other than like his parents and siblings. And he's this wild extrovert and he was so excited. Like he's just like squealing and shaking his little fists. And it was so cute. And then we'd go places and we were going to this antique shop and there was this little old man there who didn't even really speak English. And he just started crying when he saw the baby. And he told us he hadn't seen a baby in like a year and a half. And he missed baby so much. And then little Isaiah just like put his hands out to him and they held each other. And it was just like the sweetest thing. And like you realize like we need all the generations. We need all the wisdom, and the wisdom keepers need the fresh little humans. And like we need all of that together. And that kind of leads us into what we were thinking about talking about, just about things happening in the world and like how do we deal with that. And well, I think that's one piece maybe is like staying together, keeping connection.
Totally. It doesn't I don't know, I can't recall exactly where this was, but I believe it was in the States somewhere. I saw a video online once of a retirement home coupled with a daycare. So these folks in their elder years would have children, toddlers, and kiddos come during the daytime. And there's just like something so honest and vulnerable about how similar of a space, even though it's completely ends of the spectrum, there's a similarity in energy and frequency because both sides are so close to the veil, like literally, like you're right there. So it's like so special when you have them together. And there's something I feel like that communicates between the two, where that those of us who are in the middle navigating so much, there's kind of a simplicity, I think, in those other areas. And in the West, we've just like, I mean, it's through so much to do with colonization and even capitalism about people having to stay afloat. Not everybody could have their elderly family members in their home with them. However, it's just really bizarre. This kind of, it feels like an overtone of a fear of death, where it's like, we don't want to look at this. We don't want to go into it. It's ceremonial. Like people, it's a privilege to age. And when someone's aged, they might not be able to go and work 40 to 80 hours a week in some type of job that's upholding what society values helpful. They have so much sage wisdom and embodied experience. And so there's something about being with any person who's older than you, whether they had a hand in raising you or not, knowing that they've had a hand in raising this generation, period. And so whether they had children or not, they've done things that have impacted the next generation. So to be able to cook a meal or do anything in the reverse feels like a circle that is so essential. And I actually think so many of us struggle deeply when we don't have kinship and connection to people in their elder years. It's such an essential part of life. And it's not, I hope to see in my lifetime more of a returning to the values of having the togetherness that's so key. And like, we might be wildly different, but there's so much we can learn through listening of decades upon decades of lived experience.
Yeah, I so agree. It sometimes feels like that's missing for a lot of us. I know I talk to a lot of women like around our age about that, about like wishing there were more elder women among us. But I'm learning like you just have to like dig a little bit deeper. They really are all around. And you know what? Women, like we're the next generation of those elders. We're going to be the wise women. And so what are we doing right now? Like what's happening in our lives? It's happening whether you want it to or not, or whether you choose it. You're being gifted with that wisdom and those hard lessons and those like sitting and waiting and sitting in transition and like all those difficult things, the parenting, the working, making a living, like all of that is
Mm-hmm.
resourcing us to be those wise women. And like, I don't know, I think about what do I wish I could find in a wise woman now? And then how will I be that for the women coming up?
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't have answers. I'm just like,
Yeah,
these are these are the questions I think about.
It's such a nice question to chew on and muse with because yeah, like it's, I agree that like it's happening all the time. And I hope to get more and more eccentric. And I just always joke, like with certain women, I'm just like, I want to be old and crazy with you, where like we'll just be these like the thing that my auntie has shared, she's really the closest person in my life, and she'll be 86 in a few weeks or 2 months. And she talks about how every decade gets better. She's just like, 30 is better than 20, 40 is better than 30, 50 is better than 40. She keeps going. And then she's like, once you get to your 70s, your body starts to really do some things that are not your favorite. However, internally, she's described the experience. And I've just witnessed this so much in her because I've sat with it. Like, why do I love this human being so much beyond just, she's just a spectacular human being, but she radiates, an acceptance. Like she's just so accepting of life and what has transpired and therefore other beings. And she really walks in this unconditional love that we've talked a lot about my own journeys. And at times where I went through such underworld journeys and such heavy and dark times. And she was very close in proximity to me. And she has this feeling as though, looking back, she felt very stuck with how to help me and didn't know how to, be of better support. But I've expressed to her within the last year in conversation, like just being with me through that time was it. Like that was literally it. She was my anchor point. She was the thing that really kept me tethered. And it's devastating when we love someone and they're in the throes of a mental health journey that's really intense. And we also can't change it for them. We can do all these roles of support and be in like an example in their life of love, that they're not alone in the experience. And I just, I've communicated that to her. Like I've always loved her and always had such a deep feeling of kinship with her, but especially through how she's shown up for me, it's been a consistent form of unconditional love. And yeah, she's the best. Like I don't think
beautiful.
I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, we all need something like that. Like this speaks back to something you were saying before in our culture about we want to avoid pain, I think, in our culture, right? And solve it. And even that's a perception of like as a mentor, even as a parent, I have a teenager as well. And I'm like, I just want to fix his problems. But if I were to, right, then I would be taking his rites of passage and his learning. And all I can do is like say what happened with me and then just be there, be that person. Like, that's just what I'm taking from what you're saying. Oh, I can settle into knowing that I'm the loving home that he can come back to as he figures his life stuff out and makes some foolish decisions and does, things I wish he wouldn't and all the awesome things. But I can be the loving, stable place. Like that's sort of the choice I have. I don't really have another choice, right? Like I actually can't make the decisions for him. I can't do any of the things or circumvent whatever it is he's supposed to experience in this life. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking of from what you were saying is, that piece of wanting to, solve the problems, take away the pain, right? And not live at the edges, right? Like children need to be quiet. They need to grow up and be mature and not have tantrums, right? Because that's like living at the edges is this emotional volatility. And at the end, most like we in our culture are putting our elders are in care homes. They're separate from us. We don't, you're right. Like have our capitalist society doesn't value their contribution as they sit close to the veil and close to the last rite of passage. Yeah. And like what can be learned there?
So much. Oh gosh, this is juicy. And I just that first share, I don't have children. I hope to be a mother one day. And I bow at the immense journey it would be to surrender your, I just imagine a parent with like a doll being like, I will live your life for you so you don't get hurt. And it's just not what's possible. And so, yeah, that experience sharing and that relationship tending where it's like, this is the place to come and you're safe here no matter what happens. And teaching or imbuing this self-trust, like this, like, I know that you will find your way and trusting yourself to make the right decisions for yourself and will shift and pivot when it's not the right decision. And I know my own journey. So much of who I am has been through the horrible decisions I have made and the like needing to go in the direction that was there to teach me something, show me something, resurrect and just like dig down deep into my psyche of things that were there that we don't always have access to. And looking back retrospectively, it's like it's a really good comedy. Like we're able to really find the humor because then you're like, what was I thinking? Like I can look back and be like, what were you doing? And then I can have compassion for that version of myself that was seeing in the dark or trying to see through the dark, feel her way through the dark. And also in many cases for myself in my own journey, I had to go in the direction of the thing that was the trigger point to uplift some weird subconscious relic underneath a rock that like I needed to have it come out into my awareness in order for it to shift.
Yeah. I mean, for whatever reason, we don't seem to learn things in the good times. We love the good times, right? Like the mountaintop experiences, the women's festivals, the like things where you're like, yes, I'm inspired. I've learned all the things cognitively. And then life's like, how about something challenging?
Yeah.
Like, no. I don't want to learn that way. But it really is the way. Like if I also look back on my life, I'm like, what were the things where I'm like, here's some wisdom I've garnered. Here's something that stays with me that is my comfort. It never came out of the good times, actually. Yeah. I mean, mostly not. There's good things like the babies and like all those things are the good times, but really it's the adversity. I would say where the big wisdom, the big knowing comes from is through adversity. It's like that. I love that Leonard Cohen line where he says, I don't know which song it is or poem of his, but you know, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. It's
so good. It makes me think of the talk of like when a butterfly is emerging from its cocoon. If you were to walk up and open up the chrysalis, the butterfly would most likely die because it doesn't have the struggle to basically like activate its wings and be able to move through the world and have the strength to survive. And I think it's just so natural for humans to see someone struggling out of their chrysalis and be like, here, let me like open that for you. Let me do this for you, especially when it's your family member. And yeah, I think there's that deep trust that everything in this life is just unimaginable trust because like we're navigating so much that at the time often really doesn't make sense. And yeah, it's this mix of, I'm a huge advocate for seeing how everything unfolds as a reason and believing in some, you know, benevolent way that the universe is unfolding, and also not diminishing our own grief, and that we can't sidestep or move around or walk past the intensity of what it is to be in a human body.
Yeah. And I think it's like the journey we've chosen or the journey we're on.
Yeah.
Either way, right? Is maybe integrating those things. So what have you found? Like, what is before we started recording, you were talking about like the inner resourcing required to move through this life, especially with the world seems weird right now, right? It feels, I mean, I think actually every generation has gone through a period where they're like, this is the end.
Yes.
This is the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, being that this is my generation, I'm like, no, but this one actually is really crazy. And I recognize the irony there of it being, well, this is the one I'm living. If we looked back, there's a loop playing that seems to be coming to a crescendo. Like it's getting bigger. There's something like everybody's sensing it. There's a transition coming. There's something happening. Things are dissolving. It's real uncomfortable, kind of exciting, mostly scary. What is it? Like, what do you think?
Well, I feel as though so much of growing up in the West is a very specific experience. And I love the word architecture. I feel like we've had certain structures created within our consciousness by growing up here, period. And travel has been such a beneficial experience in my life because it's opened my eyes to how other people are living. And so much of the West, like just capitalism itself, this whole model that like you're going to have this nuclear family and it's going to be you against the world, and like all of this ideology that's so divisive and separates human beings. With when we trace historically going back in every direction, no matter the cultural lineage, village was how humanity existed. And so that core level of belonging that we in our cellular memory need to feel, or we feel like we're going to die. Like if we don't feel like we belong to a group, whether it's 3 people or 300, we feel like we're going to die. So it's like so essential to our survival and to feeling that we're safe in our body and in our reality. And I feel like in the West, I've just like, it's so, you know, to count our blessings and to understand our privilege, but to also recognize that if I'm in a city, which I live pretty rurally now, but if I go into a city, I could eat any type of food that I could ever dream of. What do you want? What are you craving tonight? Go and find it. You'll find it in the city. And I have said this where it's like, not only is it available, but they kind of prepare it, and it's okay if you don't eat it, they'll just throw it out. And then we have a huge portion of the population on the planet not eating or not having access to food. So it's like, where, like, in what world and what reality does this make any sense? And so I feel that the time through the pandemic was, you know, a lot of conversations around, I would hear people be like, I object going back to normal because it was never normal. It didn't feel normal.
Yeah.
And so what are we trying to reimagine as we move forward? But it feels as though whether it's this late stage capitalism, whether it's all of these structures that are crumbling before our very eyes and the systems in place, and those of us who are willing as well to look at what structures am I carrying within my body, growing up in a colonized world with certain ways of being as the norm and it being completely promoted and accepted. And, you know, like it, I know so many people from different cultures move to this continent thinking like, I can make a different life for my family.
Yeah.
And there's something so powerful about having a dream period of any variety, but to know that you can make a change and do something different for your family is massive and such a driving force for so many people. And yet it feels as though there's a lot of manipulation and control that's beyond, I just feel like humanity's been very disempowered from the get-go of what's the true history of humanity, how we've gotten here, and what's the stories they're telling us. I feel as though I grew up in an education system which 100% had value in terms of some of the information I was learning and the social experience. And in other ways, it was horrific to be in a chair for 8 hours a day under fluorescent lights and not being in an inquisitive experience that's allowing things for like to somatically even be registering in your body. The amount of tests I did where I had to study and then regurgitate, and if I regurgitate well, I'm getting an A. But there's no real critical thought or personal reflection or perspective being imbued into the work. And then it really just feels like this hamster wheel or assembly line of like, you're going to go to school and then you're going to get this job and then you're going to do this job and you're going to do these things that are lined out for you. And an author I love, Jedediah Jenkins, he rode his bike from Oregon to Patagonia in his 30th year, I think. But he was speaking to folks who were kind of coming towards the end of life. And he kept hearing from multiple people, like, it goes by so fast, and almost like, what just happened? Like looking back at their life and almost, was I in the driver's seat of my own life? So he made a lot of decisions to really take the bull by the horns and like really go after the things that scared him and that he really wanted to do. And I think we're all in a time of, there's just deep soul work that we're being called into in terms of being in right relation with each other, with the land, wherever we reside, and how we're going to move forward. Because there's a huge issue with the systems in place, and they're incredibly destructive and extractive. And it feels like a death model. Like the West, it's so wild to me where it's like, look, I can have my fancy bag and my fancy this, and not to knock fancy bags. Girl, go get your fancy bag. but we're living in this, it feels like Barbie, where it's like this like make-believe world of feeling, and actually like, do you deep down at a soul level feel connected to your life, feel the roots of your feet connected to where you are? Do you feel the depth of connection with other beings in a true way versus, you know, there's in the West, it's like gossip and certain things are really promoted as in terms of satiation with connection. And it's like, no, like, do you feel connected to other human beings? Do you feel connected to yourself? And my life's events and just like my own journey has definitely taken me into a place of embodiment and movement as a huge path of how I live my life and what I share with others, but also like the veils around our consciousness and this distortion, these distortions, there's many that are placed in our psyche at such a young age of what we truly are and what we're truly capable of. And so I really, you know, people were talking about this like shift in consciousness and an awakening, and yes, it's so real. So many other times in human history, they're like, this is it. This is the end. Get your life jacket. We're all going down. And it's very fascinating to think on like a psychology level of why each age thinks that it's the end. Cool. Like, let's ride it if that's what's happening, because then it could be an actual true catalyst and spark and get some fire under our butts to make a change. And it's through how we live. It's the way we think and the way we speak 100%. But it's also like, I'm just a really big advocate for how we are actually engaging with every single thing around us, from the plant that we're picking, you know, something off of to eat for our dinner, or how we engage with the person who makes our coffee. Like, every single moment of our life and waking reality, we have an opportunity to make a change through how we live. And yeah, I want to see a different world to the extent that I can before I die, which maybe it's crazy to know that we don't get an expiration date. They're not, you're not born. They're not like, here on, December 6th, you're going to take your last breath of this year. I think we'd live so differently if we knew.
But the fact is, like, that actually is the fact. Like, there actually is a date that is the date. Like, you don't know what it is, but there is. No. Like, no one gets out alive. Like,
nobody does.
Right? Like, there is an expiration date. And, like, who knows? And I suppose you can't, like, sit with that heaviness all the time. But it's something to come back to, right? And, like, when you think, you know, the things that are uncomfortable in your day, does it matter? Is it worth, like, hanging on to? Is it? How, like, in what kind of relationship do I want to be with the people around me, given that time is finite?
100%. It can be such a, and that's, you hear lots of folks who have a near-death experience or survive cancer or go through something life-altering, and they're just completely different people because the things that used to matter to them. And I often think, like, within a world that has us so rooted in consumption, it's like people are trying to pad themselves into not dying. Like, you can have 10,000 possessions and you're still going to die. It's such a funny experience that, of course, we want, we the creature comforts, like, even just thinking of what a lazy boy is, like, just how, like, don't worry, you got a cup holder for your remote control, you don't have to get up. But it's like, then we're so disconnected from our primordial bodies, which need to move and need to, and have, you know, just rhythms and ways of connecting with sunlight and the earth and all these things that feel so natural. And within a very short period of time, they've stripped humanity of that in the West. Like, they've really, they're like, here's your concrete reality. And I cannot speak for another person. Like, if a person is in that city format and is thriving and loves it, that is what their soul is meant here. That's what their soul is here to do. And for me, I was always like, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like this. Like, this doesn't feel right. And in situations of women's gatherings or rewilding experiences or just nature connection time, like, just how much I've prioritized that in my life, because that's where I've always felt the most belonging. And so I really think that it's important for us all as individual souls to attune, as long as it's not harming another being, to attune to what really lights us up and what our soul feels good doing. But also, like, we have our individual body and then we have the collective body, and we have a responsibility to the totality of this reality and how we show up. And we actually have a larger impact than we realize, because it's really that ripple effect. I just visualize a frog when it's in the water and it's ribbit and brrr, all the ripples come out. Because just like one conversation with one person could impact 17 people, because then how they choose to move through their day might alter even by a 1% difference. And that feels exciting to me, like that space of creation and speaking life into this world. And yes, we need to grieve and be with these processes, but then it's also like I have an ability to weave through my words, my actions, my behaviors, my gestures, upliftment and love and restoration of these places that feel so broken. And so let it be both. Like, let me grieve and let me like learn how to move the dense, heavy energy, but also just continually come back to prayer. And that's why babies, man, like babies are just like the hope for us all, because we're like, this is for you. Like we're
Yep.
just here for such a blip. It feels long, but it's really quite short in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, totally true. It's very small. And yeah, without the thought of children, like what are we bothering? What are we saving it for? What do you? It's for those little people, and for whatever it is we're here for. I think we're all in search of meaning.
Yes.
For like, why though? And I see a lot of people asking those questions recently, actually, more than I think we're just at like a time in history where people are seeing things. People are waking up to a lot of things we thought were capital T truth, right? Who writes the history books? Who does it? Is it really the story? Is it the only story? Is there one story? You know, and just asking all of these sort of questions.
The light is just sparking off of your microphone and it's so pretty.
It's cool, hey? There's a maple tree out there, and it's just sort of like blowing in the wind, and that's what's making the the light move like that. It's pretty neat.
So pretty.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful day here. You know, you were talking about like being connected to the earth, and I feel the same way. Like I live in a city now, which feels not totally congruent. But like it is where I am. And so it is congruent then, because the only thing that is meant to be is what is. So this is where I am. But I grew up, in the woods, like running through the woods and picking flowers and herbs and playing with them and making a mud kitchen. And it's interesting now, like at this point in my life, and like you were saying, really in our Western culture, how far we are removed from nature. Like the actual hardest thing feels like getting morning sunlight. Real hard to do, right? It's right out there. It's free. Comes every day. You get an opportunity to try again every day. And like connecting to my body, like moving my body in a healthy way, rather than just like going through my day with the things I have to do. And it's like, just a thing to ponder of like, why is that what's removed? And like, it also seems to be what is so important for our functioning and our mental health and our, all of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's an interesting, like whenever I'm around a fire, I'm like, this is it. Like there's something that's happening that predates language, predates the cognitive structures of my mind being like, fire is warm, fire cooks my food, fire is good. It's like, no, like there's something, and that's like, you know, whether we're just like looking back incredibly far back, but even just 2 generations ago, 10 generations, like fire has been the, you know, one of the central pieces to human survival. And I've had journeying times with fire as a companion, where I would just, in 2020 actually, like I would spend most days having a fire, and I would think like, okay, I'm going to go outside for an hour, and then it would be 7 hours later. And it was just this like sitting with the fire, tending to it, but also staring into the flame, and just recognizing that so many of my ancestors, all of my ancestors have done this. And we're like the first generation that knew a time before social media. Like we're in such an interesting shift of our reality. And I definitely felt, which I mean, like kind of feels like another form of fire, which is just this like weird, I remember when Black Mirror came out, and I did catch several episodes, and it was very foreboding of like, this is real. Like this isn't even like some dystopian sci-fi thing. Like this feels very attuned to what we're navigating as a species. and there's a dualistic nature to these screens and the technology, and that it's a huge bridge. I have so many connections in my life that have come through Instagram, and I'm so grateful for the bridging. And then I also recognize within myself, like when there's something I'm really not wanting to look at, it's like going to the screen to just completely like detach and remove myself from whatever feels uncomfortable. And how it's been designed that way. And we've never in history had so much dopamine just flooding over our awareness. Like, it's a lot for us to be stimulated in that way. And that's where I think the philosophy of chop wood, carry water, and people who do choose to live more and more simply actually have such richness in life, because hard work begets good feelings. Like, it feels good to work hard for your life and to show up in ways that it's not just handed to you. And when something's just handed to you, you might appreciate it to a certain extent. But if you had to like blood, sweat, and tears your way through something and face every edge and fear and doubt and all these things and keep going, it's like, those are the types of tales that I hope to share with people on my deathbed, of like, I had no idea, but I just kept going somehow. And I think there's such comfort in knowing that we each have a unique flavor and path of a human existence to walk, but we're all swimming in the same emotions and experiences. So whenever I'm in circle with other human beings, I get really lit up around our shared experience, and how you might not have that direct, that person shares something and they broke their foot while skiing or whatever. It's like, you don't have that direct experience, but you had a time where you hurt yourself in this way and you couldn't move and you had to face all these limiting experiences, but it always seems to be the case every time that every person shares, and you can resonate with everybody. And that's where like art has been a saving grace in life. I just can't imagine life without music, and how often it's so like, I think it's incredibly rare for me to not cry when I go hear live music. And when I show up to somebody's set, they're expressing a story of heartbreak about Tony. I never loved Tony. I don't even know who Tony is, but I'm bawling because they're touching this place in me that knows the depths of grief that I had to navigate through my times of heartbreak. And there's a lifeline. I've often seen it like we're out at sea and we're just like like trying to keep our head above water, and it's so intense, but you look out and there's millions and millions of people around you. You're all in this experience of survival and making meaning and feeling worthy of the fact that you woke up today too. It's like we're all to find that meaning is like, I think it's like we're trying to fill the bigness of our own shoes, and it's like it's innate. If you woke up, you're worthy of that. Like, there's a reason you woke up.
Yeah, there's something for you here. And that's what we steal from our children when we do all the things, right? When we save them from the things, like the chop wood, carry water thing, that experience you get of doing something hard and persevering through it.
Yeah.
Like, as much as it feels like you just want to save them from all the pain, you just want, even from the things that are a little bit hard, and I could just do it for you. I could put your shoes on for you. I could do it real fast, right? And it'd be over. But that's what you're taking. Those little wins, those little rights.
And I just have so much reverence for the mamas who like have to get to the thing and gotta get the 70 things. And they're just like, give me your feet. Let me put your shoes on. We gotta go. But just that, like, if that extra time can be there for them to be like, okay, bunny ear, and like figuring it out. It's super special.
Let you have a little cry about it. It is hard, right? Just like we do in all our things. And just like we're allowed to cry a little bit through our hard things and figure it out, and then come through the other side and have that great appreciation for being here.
Totally.
Yeah. You were talking about the profoundness that comes from like a near-death experience, or hearing people talk about that. And I found in my life that I've been able to experience a little bit of that through experiencing loss in life. Like, so I haven't had a near-death experience, but my dad passed away a few years ago. And I found that there's like a darkness that comes in with that, like with anything else, right? That you forever carry. But also an appreciation for aging and for the gifts that my dad gave me, and for the knowledge that life is so finite. And I'm not going to, like, all the people around me aren't always going to be here to enjoy. And that when we can sit in conversations like this, like, we're just existing in this moment in time together. We're sharing some of our like finite gift of time on this earth with each other. What a lovely thing to offer each other, right? That we can just sit here and have this conversation and like this time never comes back to us. This is it. This is what we decided to do with these moments. And yeah, I think that's a gift that's come out of death and loss for me, is the perspective on that. Like, that it's not going to last forever. And so it gives some softness to harder times. They also won't last forever.
Yes. Yeah, that's so real. What was your dad like? I just always love hearing about personalities. What was he like?
Yeah, my dad, let's see. My dad was a musician, which is pretty fun. Yeah, and he was older when I was born. So I have a brother who's 20 years older than me. And when we talk about my dad, we had, like really different dads, really. Because my dad had all this like life wisdom, was on the other side of some more life wisdom when I was born, and was like way more chill, like shared so much music with me. And now I'm a music teacher and I love music, and it's just totally my life.
The things that, and like, that's, we're getting to know each other. You're a music teacher. Yo, that's amazing.
Yeah. I love it. I love music. And he was a deep thinker. And, it's so much of the stuff he told me, which I thought he was kind of a crazy conspiracy theorist, that I found like funny, interesting, a little humorous at the time. And now I'm just sort of like watching things he told me happen in the world. And I'm like, oh, like, how did he even know the names of these people? Like, he wasn't he was reading it somewhere, but he was knowing this stuff before like Google was really a thing. He was talking about some of these things that are just going down in the world, like stuff that many of us became more aware of in 2020 and 2021 as things were being unveiled. And he already knew these things. And I just, so much of his wisdom comes back to me all the time. Like, what a gift. I wish I could tell him it was a gift, but I actually think he already knew. Right? He already knew, and had a lot of grace for me in my like adolescent, knowing it all more than he did.
So part of it, yes, I remember being like, I know. And it's like, now looking back, being like, oh yeah, why don't you tell me about what you know there, kiddo? But just how much that relationship just, and then the through line, the like continuation of legacy, that you're a music teacher, like that's so connected to him. That's super cool.
Yep, it is. Okay, so one of my favorite pieces of research, I have a degree in psychology, so like I went through like all kinds of research, and my favorite piece that I still remember and think about, it's so relevant, is called it's research by, last names were Dunning and Kruger, so it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. And what it basically means is, it's speaking to this like knowing everything when you're an adolescent. Like, never did I know more than when I was 15, probably like 15 to 17, like literally everything. Like, I was so confident I knew everything. And there's something beautiful about that. We need those teenagers who don't know that things aren't possible yet, who just do impossible things and like create beautiful things. But and I only knew that much because I didn't know enough to know how little I knew. That's why I was so confident, right? And like, everybody goes through that. And we actually have that in many different topics in our life. So this Dunning-Kruger effect is saying that people who are very, very confident in what they know actually probably know the least, because they don't know the vastness of what they don't know. And the more you immerse yourself in a topic, the more you learn, you realize you'll never know it all. That there's so much more than you could possibly have time to learn, that the piece, which might be like, it might be the most in the world, it might be more than anyone else knows on that topic, it's still so small compared to the grand scheme of things. So the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in when you catch someone who's like very confident, like a teenager who just knows everything about everything, and it's great, but they only feel like that way because they actually don't know the vastness of what they don't know. And I think about that often. You'll see that come up in your life. Now you're going to be like, oh, the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's a name for it too, and just knowing, it's such a real thing, and that it's endless, the information, which is really something. Creation is something, just like how much exists and how much there is to learn, and people who dedicate their lives to one single thing. And still, like, no matter how much time and energy spent, and we talk, like, there's a theory of like 10,000 hours to become in the form of mastery with something. But even then, still, like, there is just so much. And
maybe that's mastery. Maybe that's coming to the 10,000 hours, the point where you know nothing. And now you know. There you go.
And now you know. And there's something that when it comes to musicians, I would say, like, when there's so much practice and time spent put under, like, in the muscle memory, in the soma experience, where there's just a relaxed energy, where there's times where I, like, listen to a musician and it's like, it sounds quite simple what they're playing, but it's so complex, and it's perfect. It's like they've drilled it in so deeply that you just get to sit there and like you're like in a hot tub of honey. Like, it just feels so warm and gooey, and you're like, I can't even believe this is music. But also you feel like you've heard it 1,000 times. Where they take it, you're like, that's exactly where I wanted you to take it. And that's such mastery of their instruments, of their voice, where they're like relaxed in their being, which I think has a big impact. I just always would visualize, if I was going to run and jump off the edge of a cliff, which what everything in life, every creative endeavor, every unknown feels like. But if I'm to question and doubt myself and barely get over the edge, like, I'm going to smack myself the whole way down the thing, versus like actually lifting off and getting away from the cliff and pushing off. We do have to have this kind of just unbound, wild belief in ourselves. And we've gotten this far. It's like, I think that's we don't give ourselves enough credit. There's a lot of like, I can't do it, or I've never done it before, I don't know what I'm doing. None of us know what we're doing. Everybody's making it up. Like, absolutely every single person on this planet. I love people who are like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And you're like, sure, cool, tell me about it. Yeah, today. And like, you've probably done this before, and you also have a wild confidence, which sometimes can borderline arrogance in some folks, where they're just like dominating in their energy, but they also get into a lot of rooms and make a lot of moves because people respond to that leadership. They're like, oh, he knows what he's doing. Like, which is quite interesting. Yeah,
it is. People do. They respond to confidence, right?
Do.
Whether it's well placed or not. Like, sounds real. Sounds real.
Yeah.
Sounds
exactly
credible.
Yeah.
I love that, what you're saying about music, about that like tub of warm honey, because that's so what it feels like. You know, when you've spent the time for it to become easeful, feels like magic inside yourself and listening to someone else. And I've noticed that even watching dance or watching actually like really like solid athletic endeavors looks like that too. Like, it looks like I could do that.
Totally.
I could do that. 100% could not do that.
Totally. Like, the amount of times where, you're just like, you can see yourself in that, because they make it look so easy. Yeah. And that feels like mastery, when you make it look easy and it's not, and you've had to dedicate so much of your life force energy into that state to become that well versed. Like, hats off to you, because also like I don't have any desires about being a contortionist. So when I see Cirque du Soleil, I'm like, thank you for showing me what's possible with the human body, things that I don't have any desire to do. Yeah. I don't want to pull my legs over my shoulders. It's just not, I'm not craving that experience. But to witness someone to show me what's possible is such a gift. And like, humans are wild creatures. Like, it feels like such a kaleidoscope of creativity and just like innovation, and then also too, like, someone's individual path, but there's something really to be said for collaboration and how much we get to create when we come together. Because I mean, that's like even in a conversation, it's like we can monologue our way through life, but so much gets sparked and activated when we just interface with another human being. And that's where like so much can happen in one conversation. Like, so many, like something can pop off in our mind, and we're all seeking these revelatory aha moments, because there's monotony and it can feel very mundane and drudgerous of like, oh, another day, my dishes, another day, my lawn, you know, and it's like this thing, and it's like, no, but it's all a gift. And there's something so special about bringing devotion to those spaces as well, like magic in the mundane, and just staying open and receptive, because I really feel that life is communicating to us. I have a secret belief that it's the Truman Show for every single human being. And it's
totally.
just communicating to you whether or not you want to pay attention. But there's a lot there for us if we really like start to look around and stay curious.
Yeah. And I talk to little kids about that with music all the time. Like we'll start a new concept and they're like, that is too hard. Like I can't do that. And we just talk about how you build brain pathways, how it gets better. And like a few weeks later, they'll practice, we come back and they're just like ripping out scales, which felt really hard. It felt like their fingers were, you know, all twisting and like not doing what they want. And like their mind knows what they want the finger to do, but the fingers aren't doing it. And then they'll be like, you know what? Actually, it was just easy. I'm like, it's actually the same. You're better. You changed your brain. Like you actually, right? Like you grew more neural pathways. There's actually like a little neuron in my wall, on my wall sitting there in my piano studio. And that's what we talk. Like you actually, it didn't get easier. It's still just as hard. You just got better. And that's the opportunity there with life, you know? And the other parallel I see in music when you were talking about like creating community and coming together and things being easeful is I see it by witnessing it in sport and in dance, but in music, like when you create music with someone over time, you get just to know what that person's going to do next. Like even I know what mistake they're going to make next and they know what mistake I'm going to make and we know how to cover it for each other. And we know if we're like, oh, we're just going to, you know, we're actually going to repeat that ending. It's going to be 4 times today. And like it's like you have like a telepathic communication with them through the medium of music. And it's
magic.
The coolest, most magical thing. I've moved away from the friends that I used to create lots of music with. I live in Vancouver and they're like back in the Okanagan. And I'm like, man, every so often I'm like, gotta get back together. Or I need to create like new jamming Friday nights where we just sing and do whatever, right? In Vancouver.
We're a bit of ways from each other. I actually, last night I was like, I want weekly musicians to jam with, because there's something very remarkable. But some of the most like incredible experiences of my life have been sitting in a jam session with very talented musicians and watching the conversation that's happening energetically between the beings. And I just love when people are so well versed in their instrument and so comfortable with exploration, and they do something in this form of synergy together. And what they create is a moment in time it's a time capsule and a shrine of the moment. It's like bringing an altar to this, like here and now. It'll never exist again. It's so miraculous. And it sounds like they've been playing it for 10,000 years together. I'm like, cool. So you wrote that in 93 and you've been playing it. Like, what's going on? And it's just jamming. It's just synergy. It's freestyle. It's trusting what moves through you as well. And I feel like that's the beauty of the discipline and the structure of rigorous practice, because then you just have, like, I'm learning guitar and I'm not very comfortable jamming with anyone because I'm still learning so much with the instrument. And that will
it's also how you learn, right? Like you actually learn through the discomfort of being like the worst in the room.
Like, I mean, that's definitely where I feel.
Truly. Yeah. I started playing piano for churches. And it was like way intimidating. So I'm like, I don't play well. It's harder to play when people sing at first. That feels hard. Or especially when you sing, and then to keep like the strict rhythm so that they can sing with you and be the leader, even though you're feeling scared. Right. And so it's actually in that, like, that's jamming. So people sing and you play. And I really feel like I don't know. I think it's like the best way. I'm like biased. I think it's the best way to learn, just to get with people who are better than you or who are also learning, and force it out. Like, don't be like, ooh, it's got to be perfect. It's got to have this sound. It doesn't. It doesn't. It'll come or it won't. It's going to be so cool. It's going to feel so good. You'll get like the magic music tingles.
And there's something about, you have to try. And we got to get over this perfectionism expectation that everything you're going to do is going to sound good. Like, get over yourself. You're going to sound awful sometimes. And that's the pathway to sounding great. But it is this like deep fear. And it's like, we want people, we want to feel belonging. We want to like
Yeah.
feel that we shared something and people were like, yeah, that's it. And when you don't have that, a huge chapter for me in my musical journey was meeting these three like totally righteous hippies. Like they just like travel the world, go to rainbow gatherings. They're just like barefoot at the beach, and they're just two sisters from Austria and a wonderful man from Ontario, and they were traveling together, and we ended up just really hitting it off, and we would build fires and just play with sticks and rocks. They're phenomenal musicians. Like he's a total bard. Like I can see him in medieval times, like serenading the king. And the two sisters sing in like 5 languages. Like they're so talented, but we would just make sounds. And half the time, if not 80% of the time, it probably sounded hilarious. And we had so much fun. They helped me have the lived experience of permission, which I can feel in a lot of other art forms, but music and singing was I had a very big restriction on my feeling that I was able to. Like I had so much fear, even though it was what I would deeply have always wanted to do. And so, yeah, it was such a powerful transforming chapter because it was like, and then we record ourselves sometimes and I'd look back and there would be these pockets that it was amazing. And we were like, whoa, like, and it's just this synergy. And other times where we just sound like a bunch of gorillas around a fire, like, ooh, ooh, ah-ahing, like making these sounds. But because there was no expectation of perfection and also just like, playing for playing's sake. And I see this with people, like I really feel like we have different forms of soulmates, and like probably the crew you had back in the Okanagan is that there's musical soulmates, like people that when you harmonize together, it's like you're healing your bodies, like your cells are coming back into the right alignment and everything's just like
that is for sure a real thing.
It's real.
Like for sure you are healed through resonance.
Music is healing. And when I am so grateful because I have so many talented musician friends in my life. I feel like my life is there's so much amazing talent musically around me. And if I sing, and I have a lot of friends who are just so spot on with harmonizing and they sing with me, and I'm just like, I just feel chills like running up my entire body. And I'm like,
I miss that.
oh yeah. And so I hope, but Vancouver's got a rad music scene. So I just hope that there's like, I see it too being, because it's so nice for families and for kids. Like if it's like a crew of people that have their kiddos with them too, because then everybody, it's that same permission slip just to explore and play. And kids will just do the most incredible things. Like you'll hear a child and you'll be like, okay, like just, because I joke, but I'm serious. We're tubes. Like we're these like tubular human beings that have spirit and inspiration and the muse move through us. And just the more we acquaint ourselves with the pathways in which we want to express from, because we're all artists. There's like this whole concept of like, if you're not making your living as an artist, or if you're not, it's like we all are creative beings. And then it's about permission though. You see so many people who didn't grow up musically. So they're like, I can't do that. I'm not that. And like, maybe they had a family that said, we're not musical or whatever. Like there's all these stories we have. And that's what really limits people from enjoying and just having a good time. And like, just tie it back to the beginning of the conversation. We're all going to die. Like nobody's coming out of this thing being like, oh, my immortal life. And like I don't have to worry because now I can just make mistakes. It's like, no, we're going to die and make mistakes. Like make the mistakes. And
we all have that imposter syndrome thing going on, right? Where we're like, even now I'm like way intimidated to play with other people who are like real musicians, even though like I've been teaching piano forever and like I play in my own right. And like, but I'm like, oh no, like, no, I can't do that though. But it's just letting it go. And like, so you had said you feel that around music. And I feel pretty comfortable around music, except when it's like the real musicians, right? Then I'm kind of scared. But I feel like that around dance, like I cannot. And I know that's, I believe that we're made for music and dance. Like it's inside of all of us. And the same way that I know in my lived experience now that I can teach anyone to play piano. I can teach anyone about music. It's a skill that lives inside us. And for some people it rises to the top sooner than others. And it's more, but it's like, it's there. Yeah. And you had said, you listen to people and it's like, you've been playing for 10,000 years. I'm like, you have like your ancestors made music together. For sure they did. Right. Yes. And so then we're pulling that from our ancestors. It comes with us. It lives in our body. It lives in our cells. And I logically believe that's the same with movement, that's a need for all of us and that it can come out of all of us. So like we kind of met Earth Daughters when I went to one of your offerings at Earth Daughters, which is all about dance and movement and right freedom in that way. And yeah, like I had to like sit the whole weekend with myself being like, am I gonna go to that thing? Like that is really scary. And like, yeah, so thankfully I had my like human, my little support baby
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with me
Mm.
and went, and it was so delightful. And I've thought, so I can do that with music. I can do it with movement and dance. And maybe that's life is inviting me into more of that kind of work where when there's incredible discomfort, there's some sort of treasure there for you. Right. If you'd
Yes.
like to.
100%. I like it's very fascinating because when I share with people about my journey with singing and how like there was a long period of time where because when I was a kid it was like what do you want to be when you grow up? It was always the exact same answer, singer, dancer, actor. Like I just wanted to be performing. And then dance, I people were just like really affirming me on my dance journey. And then I became a competitive dancer when I was quite young. And so dance, and it was what I was doing every day in my house, like in my basement or in my bedroom. And then like actually being trained in a studio and devoting myself to that path where then I will dance in front of anybody. Like it's just like, it's so second nature. To sing in front of people. It's been like since 2018 that I've actually been doing it. Whereas for years, I'm like dating musicians, all the people I fall in love with are musicians. All my best friends are musicians. All I want to do is sing. And it was this paralyzing, I'm going to die. Like it was like the story was like, you're going to vomit and choke and die on it. Like you're not, you can't. And it felt like a hand. And so there was like a lot of ancestral healing work because I also recognize the silenced women that I came from in my lineages on both sides and just feeling this deep pull to why does this scare me so much? What's here for me? And then when I chat with people about movement, I have so much understanding in terms of like, again, it's been for me, it was singing in front of people. People are absolute, like, I'm not a dancer. There's no way I'm dancing in front of other people. And the thing that I have seen time and time again is folks who like, I love the kind of social people watching experience that is a wedding where you see somebody who's kind of just like, like not really dancing. And then they get a few drinks into them.
Yeah.
Like I say, like generally it's like 3 drinks in and they've got their tie wrapped around their head and they're dancing and they're like the center of the dance floor. And what I see in that great uncle who's having that experience is somebody who so deeply wants to express through dance and has stories that they can't or has fear of being seen in their dance. And so we are all dancers. It's like, I think human beings are meant to sing and dance. Again, no matter your cultural lineage, this was how we prayed. This is how we communed with the infinite and something greater than ourselves. And with dance, it is, I mean, it's just a different form as singing is, but we're moving energy. Like we're shifting our state through attuning to what we feel and allowing ourselves to express. And I've been sharing a lot in my offerings, this visualization, because it's something that I dance with a lot, which is water meeting the shoreline and how it changes the shape of the land and how when music enters, when vibration frequency enters our form, it changes our form. We all of a sudden we hear something and it makes us lift our shoulders, or we hear something and it makes us settle into our hips. And there's something, people might just think that it's dance. They're like, oh, that person's just dancing. But to me, it's absolute like Jedi energy mastering, because if we can attune ourselves to the sensation that a song is making us feel, whether it be through lyrics. Some of my most favorite songs are instrumentals, and that to me is profound when a musician can touch the depths of your soul just through their instrument and without having to use English words to understand the meaning. So powerful. And to dance from that space. And when we dance from that space and allow ourselves to be an honest recognition of what it's like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I feel. So it's like, dance your awkwardness, dance your frustration, dance your grief. And then it seems that we have greater access to dancing our joy and our playfulness and our sexiness and all the things that we also want to experience when we're in our body. But we're really living in a world that's designed to pull us out of our body. And we talk about like getting out of the head, getting out of the mind and into the body. And I would say that a lot too. And I'm like, I just joke all the time before I start guiding. I'm like, our minds are not going anywhere. Like, we don't have like an off switch where we can just be like, badunk. And like, yes, if you're an enlightened being, please come into my offering and let's get into the free form floating, you know, nuance of where you're existing in. But we're in a human experience. We have an ego, we have a mind that is gonna say stuff. I think when we start to dance or do something vulnerable, if it feels edgy for us, the megaphone gets pulled out of the inner critic who's just like, I'm gonna tell you every last detail of every single angle you're making that's wrong with your body and how it's not right and you gotta do it slower, faster, bigger, smaller, and it's all this story. And if we can have compassion for that part of us that's trying to keep us safe, similarly to when I was like, you're going to die if you sing. If you sing in front of other people, you're about to die. So don't do it. And so it was like, okay, I won't do it. I don't want to die. And with dance, I just time and time again, people are like, no, that's not for me. You're like, I can't do that. Or I'm not a dancer. And it's like, what's on the other side of that story? And when I watch, so I always joke, I'm like, I want you to feel 3 drinks in at a wedding, but completely sober.
Yeah.
Because I see the dudes at the weddings with the tie wrapped around their head where it's the 5-year-old self. It's the 30-year-old that, you know, celebrated when they got the promotion or when they fell in love. It's like all these versions of themselves. And that the dance floor to me is like the symbolic place of our life. It's like, it's the meeting place of this is an ancestral cellular memory keeper library of information of every day I've lived, but every day 2 lines have lived. And our dance gets to be this place of like, I'm here to be in connection to what is in my body and to also move it, to grant ourselves the opportunity to move what's in our body, because that can get really stuck and stagnant and heavy and dense for us, and to enter into a different way of being, a different way of moving. And to, like there's a lot of elements that feel very rooted in childlike innocence with dance, because if a baby hears rhythm, they start to move. Yep. Like it's just in us. It's our natural state is to dance.
Maybe that's why it's scary. It's very vulnerable. Right? With children live in this entirely vulnerable open state, and they'll cry when they need to, and they'll just like have whatever feelings. And maybe that's why dance feels so intimidating.
So much so. And I think there's an element of like, we've all had to learn survival mechanisms and ways of being. And I think a lot of that can be like, I have to hold, like something was happening outside of me that I couldn't change or do anything about. So I have to hold my emotional state. I have to have some form of control. And dance is a feeling of really, when we go into that full state, there's no control. There's no, like, it's, you're really giving yourself to the dance. You're giving your body. And I also recognize how much moves through us that is from another place. It's like we have so much being danced through us, but I like to use the terms or like the wording of leave it on the dance floor. Like we get to, every time we meet ourselves at this edge, we get to experience different versions of ourselves. And the way I operate and hold space is not to come, like, yes, of course, when we go to a dance floor, we want to feel our best and feel like, oh, I'm just floating in the room. But there are days where we don't want anyone to see us, and especially in our dance. And if we invite that version of us really into the space as well, the vulnerability piece allows for such alchemical realization of who we are. We're just coming back into wholeness. We're very fragmented. Like we're just, all these parts of ourselves are rejected and judged and whatever. And then it's like, okay, so what about the flaily, silly, crazy dancer? And I taught kids for many years. When I was living in Vancouver, I was teaching upwards of 24 hip hop dance classes a week to kiddos. And I wanted to be like, I will be the silliest one in the room so that they feel comfortable. Yeah. And so there's an element of, and working with kids is not that different from working with adults, because we all have these spaces that we have to tend to in a gentle way. And but dance is like, when I'm on a dance floor and people are really dropped in and feel safe to be in their body, which is also like, that's a whole other, topic of how much survival we have to not fully be in our body because it wasn't safe. Yeah. And so coming back is a big journey. And then, but it feels like church, like that dance floors to me, when they're really in that full liberation and full permission to be with our body in our body. And I'm I'm just big on praise for the body and having this like, wow, like our bodies are incredible. And we have a lot of stories of what they are or aren't. And yeah, it's reclamation. It's like, it's big soul work. Cause I think some people too, they're like, oh, you do dance offerings. And I'm like, yes. And it's like, we're really here to connect with ourselves on a soul level. That's definitely the intention.
Oh, I love that. Tell me about what offerings you have out there in the world. How do people connect with you?
Yeah. So I have been focused so much primarily in person, and I've done the occasional workshop online. Like I've done them throughout the years, but right now I'm really wanting both. Like I'm really wanting to connect with folks online so that there's an opportunity to dance with people wherever they are. And also there's something beautiful about the safety of your own room. And that's where always my often most amazing dance experiences happen, is when I'm just dancing by myself in my room. And in person, on the other hand, has a felt sense that's just of connection and community that is like nothing else. And so I want to do both. So I live on the West Coast and travel around quite a bit. Salt Spring Island is mainly my home, but I have beautiful connections and community to people, to humans, and to the land on the coast, Sunshine Coast and Powell River. Currently, I'm right now I'm up in Tofino. And so there's lots of travel. So workshops are always happening in person, depending on where I'm at. And I always share and promote them on my Instagram as the main spot to be checking in for upcoming events, which is A Light in the Woods. And I'm just about to launch a whole lot right now. I'm in the back end creation side of things with online offerings, from one-on-one sessions, which I'm going to be doing. You can just book one session with me. I'm going to also be doing ongoing containers with people, both in one-on-one avenues or small group containers. And I'm also like, just really, there's so many ways that I've shared and created online for a long time. And I'm just going to launch this week a Substack for writing, where I'll be releasing writing every week, and it'll have a small membership fee for each month. And then I'll also do monthly calls, because one of my favorite things is to actually just jam out in free form talk, in free form, like orating. I think there's a big desire in my life of motivational speaking. So it's always infused into everything I do.
I can see that for you.
Yeah. So just kind of expanding my offerings. The offering is called Journey to the Temple, and my last name is Temple. And that was always like something that has been an interesting journey with my name. And at some point, just coming to this deep gratitude to have that as it's all just sound and noises we make to get someone's attention, but to have that last name and to really feel into the power of how much our bodies are a temple. And so, it was like this name, Journey to the Temple, like so much about coming home, and just really, I just feel super passionate about folks leaving our time together, even just like the most minuscule small amount, more just softened with themselves, more compassionate with their experience, more curious about what they're really called to do and create in this lifetime. And I feel like the more we're in our body, the more we're able to have discernment and take this, like that arrow, just having that precision where I can make a decision and say, this is for me, this isn't for me, because the mind has lots of stories, and deep in the body, there's this innate wisdom that can really help be such a grounding force and compass for us in our life. And so, I'm like, what does it look like? And people come out to my dance offerings, and I love that. And they're often people who love to dance. And I'm really keen to get into spaces where people don't love to dance and help folks who might really be in the cerebral realm and really up top because their job demands it and their lifestyle is all about it. And what does it look like when we're in our body, and how we then would live from that place.
Oh, I love that. That sounds a lot. I end up talking a lot on this podcast about true prenatal care and how it's not about getting your blood pressure checked and getting your iron levels checked. That it's actually about like dropping into that real knowing that sits inside yourself. And like you're saying there, like dance is a path to that. That you can like just drop right into your body, into that like what's at the center, what's at the juicy soft part that we in our culture seem to be less connected to. And then how do you find that? And then that's prenatal care. So dance as prenatal care. I like that.
Yes. Yo, I'm like dance. Like some people will be like, oh, I got a big day tomorrow. I'm like, dance about it. Like, oh, like I don't know what to do. Dance about it. Like, oh, I'm in love with this person. Dance about it. Like it allows us to have this honest feedback and conversation and dialogue with our body. So often for me, just my dance practice often ends up, yes, I'm tracking sensation and I'm going in and I end up crying because I just like all have lived so many days in this state of numb or like not really attuned to what I was feeling. And there's all sorts of things in there for us, from, you know, despair and hopelessness to like absolute radiant upliftment and prayer. And that's where like we really want to be able to attune into the full spectrum and not just live in one area of our life, but it's that duality of, in order to feel one, we do need to feel the other. And yeah, I just think dance is just like, it's definitely for myself, the pathway back to myself. So I hope to, that's always the goal, is to share that with people where they're like connected, but mostly where they're like, oh, right. Like all these other things that I might be thinking about my body or my choices or where I'm at in my life or all, like, it's a lot of, we're really good storytellers. And to get excited about the potentiality in that field, that resonance of anything is possible if I choose it and if I continue to choose it and move in that direction. And yeah, it's funny with like shaking is like one of the best ways to reset your nervous system. So just like, even when I'm like about to have a conversation that's going to be hard or do something that I feel challenged by or confronted by, I just like shake and just like drop my heels on the ground. Let me like feel how much I'm there in my body. And it helps me. I want to speak from my truth in a kind way, in a loving way, versus being in this, like, when we're in our head, it complicates a lot of our lived experience.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for sharing. I love this conversation.
Me too. This is so fun.
Next time you're out this way, I think you have to bring your guitar and come over and we'll figure it out.
I would love that.
Yes.
That would be so dreamy. And get some baby therapy time.
Yeah. Therapy baby's always available.
Yeah. Oh, this was so lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, as you heard, it's official. I am calling in a Friday night or weekend jamming song circle at my house. If this is something you'd like to join, send me a message. I think this needs to be happening. Or if you have one, let me know. I'm manifesting this in my life and I'm inviting you along with me. You can check out Birth Through the Veil on Instagram for pictures from every episode, including this one with Drew. Check out the show notes for how to connect with Drew. She is on Instagram at A Light in the Woods. You can find a link in the show notes for where to submit your story. I'd love to hear the wisdom that you bring and or your birth story. New episodes come out almost every other Tuesday, kind of coming out every Tuesday now with this Earth Daughters collaboration, so you're getting a bonus. You can support Birth Through the Veil by following, subscribing, liking, sharing, rating and reviewing, all the things. Until next time.